Welcome to the lecture on simple interest. To understand simple interest, we need to start with some definitions. So in simple interest, we're going to have a formula, and each letter is going to represent an idea or a quantity. In particular, we're going to have the principal, P. So the principal in financial formulas is the balance on which interest is paid. For us, it's usually the starting amount of money that is invested or paid. In some cases, it'll be written as we're borrowing it or it's a loan. The interest earned on an account is the money paid for the use of the money lent. So usually when you borrow money from a bank, you don't just pay it back dollar for dollar. There's a charge on it, and this is what we're referring to as interest I. Then we also have something that is sometimes called the future value or the accumulated amount, which is the total amount of money paid or returned when an account is closed. So it is the principal, P, plus interest, I. Simple interest is interest paid only on the principal. So in real life situations where you might have a credit card or a car payment or a savings account or a retirement fund, typically what happens is the interest goes back into the account and you kind of earn interest or accrue interest on interest. That is not simple interest. Simple interest doesn't really happen in the real world, but it's a good starting point for us to understand interest mathematically so that we can lead up to those more complex scenarios. So for us, when we're looking at simple interest, we're just thinking about a percentage of whatever we initially deposited. It doesn't go back in, it kind of just sits off to the side. So our formula is I equals P times R times T. So I is the interest, P is the principal, R the interest rate, and we need to be very careful to write this as a decimal. T is the time in years. Also need to be careful here, making sure that our unit is years. So here's a basic example. How much interest do you earn after 13 years if you invest $1,500 at 4.2% simple interest? Well, the problem is telling me this is simple interest, so I need to use the formula I equals PRT. It's asking me how much interest. That's the opener of the question. How much interest? So I know I'm going to be solving this equation for I, interest. I also know that I have 13 years, $1,500 is invested, which means $1,500 is what I initially put in the account, and 4.2%. So these represent time, principal, and rate. So just to capture what we've taken from the problem, P is 1,500, R is 4.2%. But again, we need to be very careful to put this as a decimal. So we'll do that. T is 13. So all we need to do in order to plug these in, we just need to convert R. It's 0.042. So now that we have these values, we're ready to plug it into the equation and solve for I. So P becomes 1,500, R becomes 0.042, and T becomes 13, since it was already given in years. And we can put all three numbers in our calculator all at once, multiply them through, and we're going to get $819.00. Typically, your homework platform will designate the amount of decimal places it wants. When it is asking about money, you can assume, unless otherwise being told, that the amount of decimals you need is 2, because that's how we express money, is dollars and cents. So let's do one more example. Find the simple interest paid on $210 loan at 5.5% annual interest for 8 months. So this one's a little bit different. It's still simple interest. So I know I have I equals P times R times T. I know I'm solving for interest because it's saying find the simple interest. So I know that I is what I'll be computing. I've got my values. $210 is the loan amount, 5.5% is the interest rate, and 8 months is the time, P, R, and T. So to capture what we have, I'm almost all set to plug this into my equation. But I need to convert R into a decimal, so 0.055. And I also need to be mindful that T is not in years. T is in months. So in order to go from months to years, I'm just going to divide by 12. So 8/12 of a year is 8 months. And I can reduce this to 2/3 of a year. So now I can plug this in. I've got 210 by 0.055 times 2/3, and I can simply plug that in my calculator to get 7.7. Again, this is dollars and cents, so it would be appropriate to write $7.70.